Hey everyone, MeltingMan234 here, and welcome to another Forgotten Media Halloween special, where I dig up some stuff beyond the grave. Mwahaha! Especially since this is the first Halloween-themed installment of Mixed Batch. Man, I can't believe it's been over 7 years since the last installment, and coincidentally, this just so happens to be episode number 7. Well, let's just hope it won't take me 8 years to make another one of these. Anyway, the main goal of Mixed Batch is that I talk about 3 or 4 topics that I feel like are too short for a standalone episode, so I combine them all into one. So instead of tricks, we'll be looking at some treats this Halloween. First up, we have a video game based on the Baby Felix cartoon. Yeah, even Felix the Cat went through that phase of, let's make a show featuring a younger version of a popular character. I haven't seen much of the cartoon. Most that I know is that it's an anime that was given an official English dub. Baby Felix has his own magic bag that he's still trying to get the hang of using it. And for some reason, there are moments where he's interacting with his future self. Yeah, didn't think something like this would involve some crazy time paradox shenanigans. Maybe one day I'll look into the show properly for Forgotten Media. Anyway, there are surprisingly a handful of Baby Felix video games, and the one that we'll be looking at is Baby Felix Halloween. In this game, Baby Felix and Baby Kitty are heading off to a Halloween party, but they end up getting lost. They decide to go inside of an old house, where they find out that their friends have been captured. Now they gotta explore the old haunted house and rescue them. The game is a standard 2D platformer where you run, you jump, and attack enemies with a melee attack or shoot them with projectiles. You have the option to play as either Baby Felix or Baby Kitty, but they both play the same, with different themes. Baby Felix is a cowboy who either uses his hat to attack, or his slingshot with pebbles, while Baby Kitty is a witch who whacks people around with her wand, or shoots stars that turns them into frogs. You got standard items to collect like ammo, health, extra lives, and of course Felix's magic bag that fully restores your health. You can only hold up to 25 pebbles or stars, but fortunately the game is very generous by spreading ammo everywhere. It's also a pretty short game, only having 5 levels. First level starts off in a neighborhood, all spooky themed. Yeah, nothing says Halloween like fighting off ghosts and jack-o'-lanterns and machines that shoot tennis balls. At least the music's good, and the graphics are pretty good for a game that was released very late into the Game Boy Color's lifetime. For the next couple of levels, there's a prehistoric one where you're mostly jumping on giant mushrooms. Then there's a space level where you start off riding a comet, and then explore an alien spaceship. A pirate level where you'll pretty much learn that climbing up and down things is automatic, where you just tap the up or down arrows rather than holding it down. As well as dealing with its boss being the sentient treasure chest. And finally, a Western-themed level with the weirdest final boss. A bandit? No. A sentient cactus? No. It's a giant wasp thingy. Yeah, that's pretty random, just like its level themes. I mean, for a game called Baby Felix Halloween, I was expecting the rest of the levels to be, you know, Halloween-themed. Graveyards, pumpkin patches, that kind of stuff. Overall, there's not much to say about this game. It's just an average platformer. What I need is something more spooky, something more strange and bizarre. When it comes to the early works of Tim Burton, it's well known that they all originated from a time when he was working at Disney, back when the company was going through an experimental phase. There was Vincent, a short film about a boy who's obsessed with the work of Vincent Price. Then there was Tim Burton's adaptation of Hansel and Gretel, that was considered lost until it resurfaced years later. And Frankenweenie, the story about a boy and his dog, Frankenstein style. But during all of that, there was another project in the works that never saw the light of day. A project simply known as Trick or Treat. There exists a handful of concept art, mostly involving monster characters, as well as other things like kids in a house, some person with a gun that shoots deadly kisses, and a twisted-looking haunted house with lots and lots of jack-o'-lanterns. The things that some people might be familiar with from this project is this clown totem pole monster thing, and this candy monster. It's a bit unclear on what style they were going for to film it. I imagine it was just going to be a short film. There's a special called Backstage Disney from 1983, where it features a segment of Tim Burton and Rick Heinrichs talking about Vincent and Hansel and Gretel, as well as getting some brief glimpses of Trick or Treat. And then there's the donkey character they briefly talk about. They show the process of its development, going from the concept art stages, where we see a morbid take on the pin the tail on the donkey game. Then they make a model to get an idea for the character, and then they made a costume with moving eyes. So it looks like this was meant to be a live-action special. However, there's a segment in the Nightmare Before Christmas visual companion that seems to imply that they wanted to film it in stop motion. And honestly, this project feels like it was meant for stop motion, because I imagine it would have been very taxing to bring those creations to life with costumes back in the 80s. And what the hell happened to that donkey costume anyway? Was it destroyed or just locked up deep within the Disney vaults? As for the story, well, we know even less about that. The only bit of info I could find was in the book Burton on Burton, where he states, "I had worked on a thing called Trick or Treat, for which I don't think there was even a script. Just a concept, a haunted house, kids, Halloween. It really adds a lot of mystery to what this could have been like. I have seen pictures of some of the models being present at the Tim Burton exhibition, even a life-size sculpture of this one-armed creature, so at least they didn't go to waste. I really like their designs, very Tim Burton-esque. You can easily see these creatures casually hanging out with Jack Skellington and the other citizens of Halloween Town, especially since it features a very early design of the Harlequin demon. A real shame that there's no info on the story, so here's what I think the special might have been like. It would have focused on some kids in an average life in an average house in the suburbs. The young boy gets excited when it's Halloween, going out with his sister for some tricks or treats. They soon find a house they had never seen before and decide to head inside. At first, the house is populated by regular people, but it turns out they're actually monsters disguised as humans, which terrifies the kids. But they later learn that the monsters aren't evil, just misunderstood with how they celebrate Halloween differently. And that it ends with the kids enjoying their time with the monsters and their macabre take on the holiday. And that concludes Trick or Treat, a canceled project that remains shrouded in mystery. A lot of speculating with this one. What I need is something more concrete, something more easier to read. Since we now have the long-awaited Beetlejuice sequel, I figured it'd be a good time to cover an obscure topic related to the ghost with the most. And that topic is the Beetlejuice Comics, made by Harvey Comics. Now, as you can tell from the cover, this is not based off of the movie, but more based off of the cartoon series. I recently finished marathoning the cartoon for the first time, and it's interesting. It's definitely a show that's loosely based on the source material, and is more or less just doing its own thing, where Lydia and BJ, are just friends who go on wacky adventures in the Netherworld. It's quite heavy on the literal humor and puns, which occasionally ends up being a big part of the plot. And it definitely has that gross-out humor that I remember being big in the 90s. Overall, it's an entertaining show, and I think it's worth checking out if you're in the mood for some good old-fashioned Saturday morning hijinks. Anyway, here's a quick rundown on the comics. The first issue features 2 stories. The first one involving Mrs. Deeds hiring a hypnotist to make Lydia act more like a regular teenager instead of being obsessed with the strange and unusual. And it's up to BJ to help refresh her memory and stop her family from getting scammed by the hypnotist. Besides, that's his job of scamming. The second story involves Lydia and BJ overhearing Mr. Deeds talking, and believes that he's talking about selling their house and moving away. So BJ suggests that they should take their chances in taking part in a lottery game in the Netherworld to earn some money. Weird thing about the story is that the lottery game is called Scuzzo. Yeah, despite the fact that there's already a reoccurring character from the cartoon who is also named Scuzzo. Issue 2, BJ in the Netherworld. The first story kind of feels more like an alternate take on the episode The Miss Beauty Juice Pageant. In said episode, BJ tries to take part in a beauty pageant for the grand prize of lots of cash, but gets booted out when the judge says that it's an all-female contest. And after starting a riot with the other males of the Netherworld, the judge gives in and now everyone is taking part, all while BJ tries to cheat his way to the top. In the comics, BJ drags Lydia into taking part in a beauty contest, and tries to make her win for the sake of having the prize money all to himself. Much like how the show was big on its literal humor and puns, it was pretty easy to see that get featured in the comics. And the art style is pretty faithful to the cartoon style. Also, it surprisingly has a very brief and very loose flashback of BJ trying to scare off the Deeds when they move into the house for the first time, just like the movie. This is probably the only element from the film they got to adapt into the cartoon universe. In the second story, Lydia and her parents are off to the beach. Not much to say about this one. Issue 3. Kind of funny that the third issue just so happens to be a Christmas-themed one. Oh, sorry, Horror Day special. Well, it does start off in the Deeds' home during Christmas time, but that's about it. The main story is that BJ unintentionally finds himself in a shotgun wedding situation after spinning gum and landing smack on the lips of a ghoul. Yeah, those weird Netherworld customs. Has a few good chuckles and some puns here and there. The second story involves BJ trying to get a Barfy doll as a birthday gift for Lydia, but has to deal with a witch doctor who also wants the doll for his kid. By the end, he decides to give the doll to the kid and find something else to give to Lydia. Yeah, just like in the cartoon, despite all the scams and pranks that he does on a daily basis, he does have a soft spot deep down, even if he doesn't want to admit it. And finally, we have a 3-part story that I've usually seen it labeled as BJ Crimebusters on the Haunt. Part 1 starts off in the Netherworld being attacked by sentient cleaning supplies. Yeah, the cleaning puns may get a bit irritating, but hey, at least Shock and Ginger, BJ's neighbors in the cartoon, get to have some screen time and sport some snazzy suits. Oh yeah, and we also get to see Donnie Juice. Yeah, another character from the cartoon who is basically BJ's nicer brother. I do find it odd how this issue acts like this is the first time Lydia has ever heard of Donnie Juice, despite the fact that his first appearance in the cartoon happened a year before the release of this comic. Part 2 is when the plot thickens, where we find out Donnie was framed into helping some mob boss, and now the trio are sent to Oilcatraz. Has some neat visuals here and there. And now we have Part 3, where the big climax happens, from escaping Sandworm Land to try and stop the mob boss from cleaning the entire Netherworld squeaky clean. Also a nice payoff, where at the start of the 3-part story, we find out that Donnie Juice used to have a pet sandworm named Cuddles as a kid, but had to get rid of him when the worm ate the mailman and some neighbors. And in Sandworm Land, they just so happen to run into Cuddles, who helps them out a few times. Though it is a bit odd seeing an all-green cartoon sandworm. Normally they have some purple to their design. Overall, the comics are alright. If you're a fan of the cartoon series, then you'll probably like the comics. The prices for them have varied at times. I've usually seen listings on eBay go from the 20s to the 30s, and others can be more expensive. But maybe you'll get lucky and find scans of these comics floating around the internet somewhere. And that's it for BJ's adventures in the realms of official comics. I guess I should also mention that there are covers that shows BJ interacting with characters from random DC comic franchises, but those are just variant covers that were made to advertise the sequel, so there's really not much to say about them. Well, that covers this spooky edition of Mixed Batch, and luckily, I made it through the whole video without saying Beetlejuice 3 times. Oh, fuck!